So we're going to do the 2000, 2002, and 2003 to start. If you've already poured your whiskeys out, you might get a sense as to why they're all fairly pale. And then we're going to do a back to the future with the last four. We're going to go 2006, 2005, 2004, 2001. So the order's there in the chat. And if I know people were asking us about this, like, why don't we have this planned out ahead of time? A good question. A, that would involve more planning and organization, but B, it would also mean that we'd have to pre-sample the whiskeys prior to the tasting, which we don't, because we want to maximize the number of sets we can offer to people, but also to staff, so that we can get as much engagement as possible. But anyway, that's the method behind the madness, and that's why we do that. I guess there's actually three things I wanted to just quickly bring to everyone's attention before we get started. So I'm going to share my screen here, starting with the whiskey calendar's in, which is exciting. We finally got the last whiskey on Thursday last week, despite ordering most of these products almost a full year ago. So we're finally ready to go. There's still calendars available, not very many. I think we're down to like 15% of what we're producing. But that last whiskey, I think, might be worth waiting for because it was 75% cask strength. I don't want to tell you what it is, but it's pretty fun. Can't wait to share it in the lineup. So that's there, the whiskey calendar and tastings. If you're in Calgary, due to COVID, I think there's a handful of spots that have opened up for our wine festival tomorrow night. People who've graciously bowed out because they don't want to get other people sick, but there's still room for that. Next Tuesday, if I'm not mistaken, Buzzard's Roost with Jason Bronner and Judy Hollis. Is that it? Jones? I want to make sure I got the whole thing there. It's hidden behind some faces here on my screen. There's still some tickets left for that tasting. It's only $25. I'm guessing this is next Wednesday. Kind of rare. Kind of surprised this tasting hasn't sold out. We've got 3 20-plus-year-old Edwardowers. And if you haven't had these 1990s sherried millstones, they are insane. Plus, there's a Glendronach, an old Glendronach, an old Ben Riach, and a Gord MacPhail Milton Duff, which how can you possibly go wrong with this lineup? It's probably a little late to get this unless we like expedite it somewhere, but yeah, there's that. And then this is a bit of a surprise, to be honest. This has been sold out for a month, but again, COVID. There's a spot that's opened up for the Whiskey Festival next Thursday, a week Thursday on the 24th. So space there. And then the last one to highlight is way down here. It's the Kinship Collection, which is walking our way through some old Islay whiskeys. I think this is the third time we've broken up a Kinship set to do a tasting like this. It's at least the second time. And we're looking forward to that. And we threw in this extra bonus Lafroig because 6 whiskeys just isn't enough for a tasting. And yeah, Kurt, I know you're a fan of this somewhat skeptically because it's not a cheap one, but it rounds things out. And we don't even know what the other ones are like.
You're talking to Lafroig. Sorry, Andrew.
The first edition one, yeah.
Yeah, man, I can't tell you. I wanted to be mad at that, but when Lee opened it and we got to try it, it was like, oh man, I know that price is high, but this is a style we do not see anymore. It was damn good.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So go ahead, Evan.
The other thing we should mention too is to go along with the wine festival is the upcoming sale.
Yeah, that was the third thing. And I'm glad you prompted me, but I did remember it. Yeah, we have a sale starting Friday morning. In theory, the prices could go up late Thursday night if everything's working. But I mean, Evan and I are working on that, so we'll see. It might be working around 10 o'clock on Thursday night, but you never know. And Jeff, look at this. Jeff's keeping us on the straight and narrow here. Calgary MS Whiskey Festival back Thursday, January 19th, not Thursday, January 18th, which is actually not a date next year. But yeah, Thursday, January 19th at Arts Commons in Calgary, the day before the Victoria Whiskey Festival gets underway. Tickets for that are actually half sold out as of today. So if that's of interest, don't wait too long. It's coming. And Jeff, again, thanks for sharing that. I'll find the link for that and throw it into the chat at some point here. But Glenfarclas, we got an awesome range. Kurt's put the link in there. Yeah, let's get rolling here with some 2000. This is actually the oldest whiskey in this range. These are all the summer 2021 releases from Glenfarclas, but appearance will tell you this is also one of, if not the palest. And these are sometimes overlooked from Glenfarclas. I know everyone's chasing the big sherry, they're chasing the deep, rich colors, but some of these refill sherry Glenfarclas bottlings are quite lovely and quite interesting. So let me find this on the site and pull up the info for you here. And let's start nosing and tasting. Evan, I think we lost Kurt.
Yeah, I texted him. It's his system seems to get choppy when we first start stuff, but if he reboots it, he should be all right.
All right.
So I think he's in the process of doing that. The nose on this one, while you're looking for that, or I can grab it if you want.
Well, I got it.
Cool. What I was doing last time, if you wanted, Andrew, is if you right click and go open picture on its own on the tasting, and then you can zoom in on that guy.
All right.
Open image in new tab. Yeah, and then if then magnify it, and you can see all the stats there. There you go.
How about that? 57.9%. Refill sherry butt, cask 3387 by the looks of things. Yeah, 621 total bottles. So a rather stable sherry, but it kept most of its liquid. And
surprising that they say refill on this one, because if I remember correctly, from all the 1990s ones, they just said sherry butt, with no statement of how old or how many times it's been used.
Unusually specific.
Mhm.
This one's kind of got like an old school Christmas cake vibe to it. Like my mom makes Christmas cake, candied fruits. I think she puts a bit of rum in there too. Yeah, this has got a little bit of that like boozy Christmas cake on the nose. It's not got that really deep, rich, dark chocolate note, but there's some prominent sherry there still.
Mhm. Sky Andrews just joined. Sky, I believe, hopefully you can see in the chat the lineup, the order we're doing, starting with the year 2000, which we're just starting on now, going to 2002, then 2003, and then going back in time from 2006, 2005, 2004, and ending on 2001.
Jeff Serja, who's very rapidly becoming our technical support, has already put the link to the Calgary MS Whiskey Festival in the chat. I just shared it there, and he reshared the lineup for Sky, who joined. So thanks for the yeoman service there, Jeff.
Yeah, the best co-host that's not a co-host.
Yeah, this one sold out sadly. This 2000 vintage. You know, when Glenfarclas releases their price lists every year, and I have a bit of a top secret formula for how I figure out what to buy. But to be totally honest, a lot of it's very blind. We don't get to see what they look like. We might get that it's from a sherry butt or a refill butt or a fourth fill cask, which is an unusual catch-all that Glenfarclas has for anything from an actual fourth fill to they just don't know how many times the cask has been used. And they use it fairly often. I actually have a suspicion that most of the fourth fills are third or second fill, but the truth is they just don't know. So anyway, Evan, Kurt's back on there, so you may want to re-co-host him. There's like a piney sappiness to this one too.
Yeah, nice nuttiness in there as well, but like a lot of honey for me, a little bit of toffee and butterscotch. Nose for some reason is reminding me of Ben Rinnes, where it's got this sort of like whipped creamy quality to it that I find on Ben Rinnes quite often.
So it's funny you should say Ben Rinnes, because when I first nosed it, I got barnyardy, like farmy. And that farminess has mostly blown off. And I associate that barnyardiness with a lot of Ben Rennes bottlings too, which I
Cool.
think is why I'm not always a fan. But I really like this on the palate. There's some nice tangy fruit. It still has a bit of that like boozy rum soaked Christmas cake.
Mhm. Yeah, a little bit of prickliness, boozy wise, on the
Mhm.
palate, but not over the top. Touch of like candied ginger in with that as well.
Candy ginger's good. And I'm gonna go again with like pine sap. There's like this
Mhm.
sweet, piney, sappy sort of tone to it too. Kurt, you're back.
I am back. Am I in
Thoughts on
real
this?
time for you?
Yeah.
Yep.
Thoughts on the 2000?
Um, the honey note Evan mentioned at first. You know that really good butter they have next door at Peasant?
Oh yeah.
It's like you've taken a bit of that butter and dipped it in honey. It doesn't have like a dirty lactic sort of funk to it. It just has this really creamy, pretty note with the honey. I really dig that. Little sharp on the palate, but in all the right ways. And the finish is 100% Glenfarclas identifiable. It's got that slightly almost burnt grain sort of note.
Yeah, good call.
Honeycomb cereal on the nose too.
The only knock for me on the palate is I find the finish is rather short and thin, but yeah, I mean, this is not every cask can be a first fill sherry cask. That would be a very difficult standard to sustain. But it's a nice bottling. I think it shows rather well. And I'm sure we've ordered some 2000 for the summer 2022 releases, which unfortunately won't be here until probably March or April, or maybe May, June of next year as the S21s were. But we did see a big price jump from the last time we had family casks, especially for the stuff in the 90s, but more on that in a little bit.
That slightly burnt note, like about 20 seconds or so after you've swallowed, after your tongue is cleared, everything like that, it actually starts to leave a little bit of a mezcal-like finish to it.
Mezcal?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, just kind of like fainty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That
touch
might
of
all be
nuttiness
tied
on the
in for
finish
that
too.
that barnyardiness that I'd mentioned that I got when I first nosed this, like right in the glass. It was, to me, it was quite barnyardy. Definitely a lot of funk on this one. And, you know, there's probably a lot of good reasons for that. I mean, Glenfarclas is somewhat traditional distillery compared to others, although I believe it has a rather short fermentation. I don't think it goes into long fermentations, but I could be wrong on that.
I think they were 55 hours if memory serves.
Yeah, which I mean, from the standards that we might have for a long fermentation, I would consider that fairly short. But anyway, still tasty, still delicious.
Yeah.
Let's move on to the 2002. I'll pull up the screen here for that one just as soon as I find it. (2002). Here we go. And this, regrettably, is also out of stock. I'll share my screen.
I can see why, just based on the nose. There's a lot more here.
So there we go. Summer 2021.
Oh,
Refill
that cask.
cork pipe. How about that? 3383 looks like the cask number. It's kind of hard to read on the edge of the rounded bottle. 55.4%, 651 bottles.
Wow.
Yeah. There's not been a lot of port pipes in the family cask range.
No.
I'm somewhat taken aback. I never, even on the palate, I would never have pegged this as a port pipe. And I really dig it.
Yeah, you and I are on the same page with this. We rarely like whiskeys from port pipes. A few exceptions in there, like the Amaret that we've got coming next year. Very grapey, very raisiny on the palate.
Yeah, combination of glossettes and like varnish and leather notes on there for me.
I'm getting on the nose, I'm getting melons and hubba bubba, like grape hubba bubba chewing gum.
Oh, good call.
I like that note. Almost those, remember the tobacco packets of gum with the shredded?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, the big league chew, is that?
Yeah, that's it.
Mhm.
One, you just sent me in another direction, Big Turk chocolate bars, where you have that
Yeah.
chocolate and then that kind of jammy filling.
I love
Yeah,
those.
Big
things.
Turk or Eat More.
Yeah.
All right, I need chocolate bars now.
Yeah, a bit of almond paste even on there on the nose right now for me, and
Oh, it's so chocolatey, and it's that kind of cheap chocolate, like candy bar chocolate, but it's milky, creamy. And then I think I'm going to stick with the Big Turk. It's got that like jelly, grapey sort of filling to it.
yeah, I
It
think the
still has a little
port.
bit of a funk to it too.
Yeah, I think the port cast comes out more on the palate than the nose.
Kurt, you were
I'm
saying?
okay. Yeah, I think there's still a little bit of a funk on this, and I am 100% with Jeff's sentiment there. He says he has a bottle of it and he's not mad. I really dig this one. I
Mhm.
really like it. And I know we came off something that was a little bit sharp on the palate, but there's an awful lot going on here that I really like. And coming back to what you said, Andrew, earlier, when you said, they're not all going to be first fill sherry. Why would we want them to be? You'd get bored of it. They'd all be the same. I kind of like the angle this one's taken, and I think they actually plucked it at a good time.
Yeah. So I don't get to tell this story anywhere near enough, but 5-6 years ago, I was in Portugal visiting port houses. And when I was in Porto visiting some of the quintas, I would ask the cellar masters if they sold their casks to whiskey distilleries. And every single one of them said, no, we don't give away our casks. In fact, when our casks are drying up or like, there's a problem, we don't replace the cask, we replace the staves. Because for port producers, they like what they call dead wood that's not going to impart any character on the wine. All they want the wood to be is a vessel for oxidation. And to me, that was kind of this mind-blowing realization, because then it then raised the question, what are these port casks then that the industry is buying, if port houses will literally use casks with staves in them that are 100 or more years old because they're not leaking, so they're not going to replace them. To this day, like, I would really love to know I have a feeling it's for the really cheap, what are called ruby ports. And I have a feeling that they're serving a purpose much as the sherry industry does, just as a quick seasoning. And that if you were to actually take whiskey and put it in a tawny port pipe that had been holding port for decades, you'd probably get a very different experience than whatever this cask actually is. Because I guess that's my point. I don't really fully understand what a port pipe is, because these port houses, these quintas, were telling me we would never sell our casks because that's not how the business works.
Yeah. And even beyond that, with you talking about ruby port too, it's kind of the same issue that you can have with sherry too, is just saying X sherry doesn't give you the whole picture, because you don't know what style of sherry or type of sherry it was. And there's multiple types of port that they could be aging as well. Yeah. Where somewhere you use a cask intentionally for longer and somewhere you barely use it at all, as they're saying. So who knows what we're seeing.
For sure. Anyway, let's keep rolling here, if that's all right, and jump on, because we're going to come back to these. One of the things we like to do is to kind of sample them and then come back and go through them a second time, just to see how they change, how they evolve in the glass. So we are now getting a little bit younger here. We're moving on to the 2003, which was part of the trio of ones that are just a little bit more pale. Here's a good example. This says fourth fill butt. And I don't know about you guys, but I don't think you would get that type of color from actually a fourth fill sherry butt, even at roughly 19 years of age. Having said that, it could be, or it could just be that it's an unknown second fill or a third fill.
Yeah, that's just it. All of their stuff that they're uncertain about, they claim it as that to, never delude customers as to what they're giving them. I love that.
This one's a little funny on the nose. I'm getting and maybe this is because we got that bazooka or that, sorry, Hubba Bubba. I'm getting Bazooka
Mhm.
Joe this time on the nose with this one.
There's a load of gum here and a load of that grape you were talking about too.
Do you remember
Canada
those?
Dry, Canada
go ahead,
Dry
Ed.
ginger ale for me.
Yeah. Do you remember those hockey cards in the 90s?
Yes.
90s that came with gum, and then
Oh,
by the
peachy.
time you cracked the packet open, the gum was like so hard it was like sharp and it would cut your mouth.
Yeah, it was usually O-Peachy or Tops, I think were
I think the Tops
Yeah.
ones were the ones that were all dried out.
Mhm.
I don't remember what the gum tastes like though. I just remember the pain.
Peter says
it
it was
was-
soft in the 80s. I don't believe it, man. That stuff
No.
was never soft.
I was alive in the 80s and I never got a soft piece of gum and a wax wrappered pack of hockey cards.
Maybe we were just going to the wrong stores. While this is opening up, it's starting to go into like Cracker Jack notes for me and like beer nuts.
Yeah, I could see Cracker Jacks. That's a good call. I'm still getting that ginger ale note.
Mhm.
It's going a little bit sort of yeasty and doughy in there, like you're kneading dough as well. Like these are hot cross buns before you toss them into the oven to bake.
Yeah.
Definitely before the baking. They don't get into like the bready so much as they do get into just the softer dough note, like a creamier note.
I might be digging a little too far, but one last note on the nose. I'm getting a bit of kibble.
Mhm.
A bit of what, Andrew?
Kibble.
Like dog food.
Yeah, like dried dog food.
Yeah,
Wow.
it's not a bit of kibble, it's kibbles and bits.
I think like we're ramping up in terms of quality and flavor here already. Good choice for the first day.
Oh yeah, that's got the best palate of the first three for sure. Like loads of fruit, spices, some nice candied nut tones in there too. It's very nutty actually.
It's going into those burnt sugar notes too, like the maybe coming from the cask itself or from the like the direct fired stills, I guess.
My grandma used to make these little cookies. They were almost like a shortbread that she pushed in the middle and put like a little dollop of jam or a little cherry or something in the middle. And there's something here that reminds me of that.
I believe you're referring to a jammy Dodger, Kurt.
Almost
As they would
jammy.
call them in the old country. I think this has got the best palate of the three for sure. Like the palate's nice and soft. It's fruity. There's spices. It's nutty. It still has a little bit of that toasty funk that the first two had, but it's just there's a lot more going on. It's probably the most drinkable, I think, of the first three for me.
And you nailed it.
Even texture wise, I find it's nicely balanced too, where this one makes my mouth water more than the other two did. It still has a bit of tannin and dryness coming through on the finish, but not as much.
Yeah. You're right, Andrew. There's no way this is like a fourth though. There's no way.
No. Yeah, there's actually some quite prominent tannins, leather, tobacco on the back end, and dark spices too. Now, Kurt, should we comment your location seems different than usual tonight?
No, this is my lair now. This is where I do all my tastings now. Don't have it angled, so I've got my, shelving and everything properly behind me, like you with your sexy setup. But maybe one day we'll get with the desk swung over to the other side. But that's where all the guitars are.
It's not like my office where like I have it pointed closer to the ceiling because my floor is covered in hockey and ringette equipment right now.
So, Evan, do you find it difficult to nose when your kids hockey?
Yeah, it's there's a lot of sweat in all these. I don't know what you guys are getting.
Hey, I didn't realize Marty's here. We should unmute Marty too.
Oh yeah.
Oh, totally.
I did let him in and then completely forgot about that. So
Dave,
Marty, you're now co-host as well. If you wanted to unmute and give your thoughts as we go along as well.
Marty's also joining us from a more narrow universe than the rest of us. a portrait universe rather than a landscape universe. Oh, there we go. Now it just looks like he's a giant. And he's still muted.
Better?
There you go.
So
So
Marty,
what do you think of the first three, man?
Well, I just got home, so I missed the first two, but
well,
nice toffee tones on this. So what were the first two we did?
2000 and 2002.
Okay,
So
Oh, we're
Dave Smith
starting with the
saying, wondering
oldest.
if I'm drinking something different. My 2003 is hot, kind of spiky, quite funky, and not very complex. Hard to say, Dave. I mean, we kind of bottle and label these in batches. So it'd be very weird for like the wrong one to get the wrong label, but not impossible, admittedly. It also could just be that your palate might be experiencing it differently than we are today. Maybe it's the humidity or temperature or some other factor, or maybe you've got COVID. I mean,
maybe
just
he's more
saying,
refined.
throw that out there. You just don't know it yet.
This is the weirdest rapid test ever.
Yeah. Yeah, going back to that again, I just think it's got the, Evan, you were talking about honey before. This has got like the nicest sweet honey tones, candied fruits. Yeah, it's just all around like a lovely, lovely dram. But always room for disagreement.
Yeah. Well,
And
maybe
you know
we
what?
should go on to something darker for the two Daves.
Yeah, the Davids, maybe this is a whiskey that, people named David, their palates just don't fully appreciate it, or they've got a blind spot
Oh.
like that. Or maybe Marty, maybe people named
Okay.
David or Marty.
just trying to catch up here. That 2000 to me has a kind of a funky nose and palate.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
I was saying, and Andrew got it for a different reason, but it reminds me of Ben Rinnes.
And Marty, the 2002, just for curiosity's sake, is a refill port pipe. Which is
Okay,
what-
I can see that. That's a little unusual for Glenfarclas.
These are the Daves I know.
Okay,
I'm going to get the next one teed up here. So the next one we're moving on to is the youngest in our lineup tonight, and the first time I think we've ever seen a 2006 family cask.
Probably. It's got a fantastic nose. Yeah.
And there's still at least one bottle, possibly two of this left. Can't say for sure because our website just says low stock. But here we go. I'm going to share my screen.
I like the color on this one.
Oh, Marty. Cask
Yeah, Marty.
3424 sherry butt, 60% on the nose, and 680 bottles. Oh, this is like, I don't know, scooping brown sugar out of a pot with a leather shoe.
Definitely has some dessert sugary tones.
Some mincemeat.
Yeah.
So we should have, as long as our numbers are correct, we should have 2 bottles of this left.
So there's 2 of these left. Don't all race at once to grab it, but man, this is some pretty nice. This is nice sherry. It's not overcooked. It's not too rich. Nice, like dark chocolate fruit and nut bar.
It doesn't drink
This is-
young either.
It's to me, it's George spilled his Guinness in the dunnage warehouse.
Really thick with like treacle. Oh, It is a tad kind of 1D to me. I mean, I like everything that's there. Like, would I be unhappy drinking this? No. But yeah, I mean, it's good sherry. It's just kind of young and dumpy.
Yeah, this is kind of like if your wife calls you one dimensional, but you're just like, well, it's a great dimension though. Like,
It's my one dimension.
yeah,
The Davids apparently approve of this one. It's good. There's some nice spice. It's quite clovey on the finish, like
mhm,
really almost a little bit of a bitter spice, but
yeah.
yeah.
I really dig this one. I think we're holding it against some older whiskeys that develop more, estery, almost tropical kind of tones as they get a little bit older. I know we throw that term around a lot, but I just think this is a younger, like it hasn't quite reached that form yet. I think it's awesome. I think it's practically flawless.
Yeah, cloves and walnuts, I think, on the finish there.
Jeff's saying I'm finding this one a little bit tannic and oaky. To be honest, the more I get into it, the more like that back end is like, I don't know, having like raw old leather and like splintery oak on the palate. Like it's just drying and kind of gritty. I don't dislike it, but I don't think I'm won over by it either. Kind of comparing this to like the Glenallachie cask that we have, which I find is just a lot more jammy and fruity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
At around the same age.
Yeah,
So
I
I
agree.
kind of missed most of your discussion earlier, but you guys nailed this lineup. I just kind of noticed all the way through it. You brilliantly put this lineup together.
It was Andrew.
Oh.
I just, yeah.
There was a little bit of luck involved, bit of guesswork, tiny bit of nosing. All right, I'm already keen. I don't know about you guys if you're done talking about the 2006, but I'm already to jump onto the 2005.
Sounds good.
Now, I should say we haven't even broached the subject of water tonight. As many of you may know, I have a particular view on water. But one of the things that I have found over the years is I found sherried whiskeys don't tend to take water as well as other whiskeys do. So even if you are a fan of drowning your whiskey, I'm not sure that I would encourage you on this tasting until you've at least given them a full opportunity to be sampled. Neat. Water belongs in a lake, says Sky Andrews. I like that. Water does belong in a lake. All right, here we go. 2005 cask 2461 sherry butt 59.7%. And man, that's an interesting nose on there. I'm getting everything from like dark fruits to like strawberry Twizzlers. There's something kind of waxy there.
Shoe leather for me as well. Like just a fresh pair of leather shoes out of the box.
Marmalade, milk chocolate, and sandalwood.
Yeah. I was going to throw out there one other one, lipstick.
Mhm.
Fruit roll-ups.
Oh man, that's like sticky dried fruits, like dates, figs, like, you know, date squares, grilled figs. I mean, it's man, that's just sticky dried dark fruit.
Yeah, I think this is the 2006 with that missing dimension. This gets closer to our Glenallachie by quite a bit, even on the slightly richer texture and weightier texture.
The texture is quite thick on this. It's almost like peanut butter. It's like sticky in my mouth.
Mhm.
And it really does put you in a dunnage warehouse on the nose. There are some really
Yeah.
cool dunnage notes.
Well, even the palate, it's earthy, a tiny bit musty, really nice dark chocolate, soft leather, warming kind of festive spices going towards the finish. Marty, what say you from
Yeah.
your fisheye perspective?
Well, yeah, this is definitely a better dram than 2006. I'm gonna say you take your shoe that's had your sticky toffee pudding dropped on it, and you
Mhm.
combine them.
Mhm.
Nice.
Maybe a little bit of fig jam.
Yeah, got some nice fruity tones.
The sherry's almost got a bit of a smoky edge to it at the back end too on the finish.
Yeah. Yeah, it doesn't go as bitter as the 2006 does, but it does have that slight smokiness to it.
Is fig jam a thing? Really?
Yeah.
What do you use it for? Like just on toast?
I actually usually on things like cheese, like it goes really well on like a sharp cheese.
Oh, okay. Yeah, fair enough. I've seen it before now that I think
I mean,
about
kind
that.
of like chutney, but a bit sweeter would be the best way
Yeah.
to look at it.
Yeah, as soon as you said cheese, I was like, oh, okay, I have had that before, but
Yeah,
for some
like
reason I was locked into breakfast.
think of like a dry, like almost woody dry oat cake with like a sharp cheddar, and then you put a little bit of like fig jam or something on there.
Cool.
You're
Sky says
good
he'll
to
send
say
me some fig jam. Thanks,
Yeah,
man.
this is where you publicly give out your address and instantly regret it.
Yeah, for sure.
All of a sudden, yeah, we probably shouldn't wander down that path, but all kinds of things could be sent through the mail. Yeah, of the sherry bombs so far, granted, we've only had two. That one's kind of a bit
Superior.
of a surprise because I don't remember, and it's another one that's sold out. I don't remember 2005 ever being one of those years where I was like, you know, if you look historically at the family cast, like the 2000, 2001, 2002, 2004 have all done well. Like the threes and the fives of the last couple of years are not ones that I've really had my eye on, but yeah, that 2005 was quite good.
Mhm.
All right, where are we here? 2004, is that where we're headed next?
Yep.
I've been dying to try this. I've told you before, Andrew, 2004, 2007, my daughter's birth years, right? So I'm anxiously awaiting this upcoming round because it's got no 7 for the first time too. But I've been dying to try this one.
All right, I think I need. Oh, I'm having trouble pulling this one up. All right, I'm gonna have to go into the back end. Maybe it's already been archived because people were
Oh,
trying
refresh your thing. I unarchived it, so it's in the link now.
Oh, okay, so that it was archived.
Yeah.
Okay.
Should be there now. Otherwise, I can pull it up.
Give me 1 second, and if it's not there, then you can. Yeah, it's not. Why don't you share it, Evan? It's not coming up on my end.
Sounds good. There we go. So Sherry
What-
Lad 59.2. It's
Very chocolatey.
yeah. And that like the darker, like really crackery Melba toast, but you dipped it in 7-Up for me.
Wow, cool.
I'm getting a little bit of a Dairy Queen peanut butter parfait moment here.
Oh yeah.
So I'm getting like that dark chocolate sauce, salty peanuts, a little bit of nice vanilla soft serve as well.
Yeah. Just a dash of X-Lax because it's gonna just run right through you.
That and the what is it? The queso, the Doritos queso dip.
Did you guys
That's
get
a
to try
combination.
the sorry, Evan?
I said, that's a combination right there.
Yeah.
Did any of you guys try the Cadbury bar that had the bits of pretzel in it?
No, but I've had the
No.
M&Ms with pretzels in them. Those are pretty rock star.
It's kind of what I'm getting here.
Actually, the chocolate coated pretzels on the palate even makes sense.
Yeah.
Oh, that's I can't decide if I like it more than the 2005, but I think it's pretty good.
Mhm. Well, 2004s have been historically like a pretty good family cask, and they've been dark ones. And so we've often ordered heavy on them. The interesting thing will be to see this coming year how many we get, because I seem to remember there was something different about the 04. I don't know if this year's 04 was a fourth fill. I'd have to look back at that, but if it wasn't, I'm sure I went deep on it again, because it has been like consistently a pretty good bottling.
There's a note on there on the palate that's like a really good kind of fermenty, tangy, unlit cigar. Like before you've lit a cigar, where it's just in your mouth and you're kind of just holding it there.
Mhm.
It's got a little bit of that really clean, awesome, fruity tobacco note.
Oh man, that's the palate too, just loaded with chocolate.
Mm.
There's some nice spices there. There's some fruits mixed into it too. Kurt, I agree with you. Like, I always think like, to me, this would be, if it was tobacco, it would be like a Cuban cigar, like kind of a little bit sweeter and a little bit lighter in profile. And fruitier, like that kind of fruity profile of tobacco.
Good palate too, juicy on the arrival, and it does kind of get a little bit grippy with tannins in the back without being like super grippy.
The alcohol on that is almost imperceptible, and it could be because we're 6 whiskeys into the lineup, but in fact, that might be a big part of it. But more grilled figs, dates, like stewed fruits, like it's thick and syrupy, almost getting into like maple syrup territory.
A
Yeah,
little bit of a hazelnut note too.
Yeah, I was gonna say more syrupy on the palate than the previous one, so it's got a little more weight and
Yeah.
You go
Wow.
back to the 2005 there, and it's just got a touch of coconut now versus the 2004 just on the nose.
Oh yeah, like macaroons or something.
Oh, that's a good call. Yeah, macaroons.
Cool.
Both are really good. I think I might prefer the 2004.
I currently do as well, but I think we'll have to wait and see. We'll have to go
Yeah.
back around the horn on them. 2001. Let's see if I can actually pull this one up.
Yeah, that one wasn't archived. It should be there.
2001 Family Cask S21. And it's out of stock. Nevertheless, let's share the screen, see what we've got here. Zoomed in. Okay, there we go. Cask number 3932, sherry butt 58.8%. This one here is the second oldest in our lineup tonight. And oh man, this one reminds me of like old like Guyanese rum.
Oh, cool.
Like that Eldorado 25 year, which it's been years since I've had that, but this reminds me of the Eldorado 25 on the nose.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's that, it has that combination of leather and wax. Again, that you were getting a couple, I think that was on the 2005, maybe on the 2006, but a touch of citrus in there, like chocolate orange or even into orange tang on the nose for me.
Nice.
Kurt, thoughts?
Spanakopita. A lot of honey and that little bit of nuttiness and like that pastry sort of thing going on. Soft fruits, almost a mandarin note to go with that tang note that Evan said too. I really like the fruit on this.
Well, so I've jumped ahead to the palate. I think this is the only one of the lineup tonight that I would describe as being like a really classic old school style sherry.
Wow. Great palate. Great balance between nose and palate there. Great balance struck on the palate too, where it was like no off notes. Finish doesn't bitter out. Great palate.
Yeah, I absolutely love the palate on this one. I think it's the richest and the most complex of all the whiskeys in the lineup tonight. And it's got that rich sherry, but balanced out by like more subtle, soft fruit tones. There's spices there, there's dunnage notes, like there's a lot going on there. Yeah, that's a surprise for me because like going into tonight's tasting, I didn't think that was going to be. I was figuring it would be like the 2000 or the 2004 would be my favorite in the lineup, but that 2001 is just showing really, really well.
Jackie Clark has a question for the cigar smokers in the group here. What are your thoughts on smoking a cigar while drinking these whiskeys?
Yeah, so I would say a cigar is probably okay with almost any of these, and this is the style of whiskey I would drink. Cigars typically, like sweeter styles typically work better, or rums and bourbons and stuff like that work really well. The latter ones you could probably pair with almost anything, I'm thinking. The first few though, you'd probably want a Maduro or something because they're kind of sharper and spicier. You don't want to pair it with something really, really light or anything like that.
Yeah. And Paul is speaking from experience. If you take a look at they're having a cigar right now, and these whiskeys last four especially are pairing very well. Fruity, leathery notes stand up well. Very cool.
And Ken's here with us too. Ken's a big cigar guy as well, so he knows that stuff.
I'm just trying
This
to
is
take a
a-
photo of this before I forget. Marty, thanks for putting your finger down because it was going to get in the way of my photo. I'm in probably the most infrequent cigar person on this. I do enjoy a good cigar, but I actually really struggle with them. I find they're just so hard on my palate taste wise. And I think for me, I smoke them so infrequently because I find if I need to write a tasting note at work, the next day I'm even struggling with my palate. And I think because of that for a long time, because for me, I was trying to do, at least in my own heart, what I felt was like very pristine technical tasting notes. I kind of avoided them. But yeah, I can see, I think any of the last four would stand up to it. I think the first three would be a bit more of a struggle, but it's not to say that they wouldn't totally work, but I think they could potentially get lost. Now, if we're talking cigarettes, you got me lost. I have no idea. But I can
Virginia
point to
Slims
some,
all the way, guys.
well, let's point to like whiskey industry legends like Mike Nicholson, who smokes like a chimney, or Ian McCallum in his days at Morrison Bowmore when he was their famous blender and he was smoking like a chimney.
Richard Patterson.
Yeah.
That explains a lot, actually.
Ashok. Ashok is quit now, but he used to be.
Yeah. Yeah. Pipes. Yeah, I know Dave Worthington from Boutique Whiskey. He's a huge fan of pipes. So yeah, it's not something I can comment on that much because it's just I tried to maintain a humidor for a while, but there's only so many hobbies you can have. And that's one of those ones where I've just decided I don't have time for it. And
You need the space for more whiskey.
I can though, Andrew, see you with one of those, what do they call it, the calabash, like in Inglorious Bastards, that great big pipe that Christoph Waltz has. That would be amazing.
you know what? It's something I may take up at some point. We'll see.
That's your style for sure.
My grandfather smoked a pipe and he lived to 94. So,
Why not?
I'm already ahead of you guys. I've already started going back around the horn. So I'm back to the 2000, which is our oldest whiskey in the lineup tonight. And Kurt, you were commenting on it before about how funky it was, or it is.
Yeah.
It is so super duper funky. I'm getting some marmalade notes from it. You know when honey, like the liquid honey, when you've had it too long and it starts to crystallize? This reminds me of like that kind of condensed, dehydrated honey as well. I like it. There's some fruit tones there, but
It's right now it's the most Denny's or IHOP of the bunch, where it's all pancakes and syrup for me.
yeah, I
Yeah.
agree with that.
Still really dig it. It's sharper, it's hotter, but I'm not looking for these all to be big soup bombs like we talked about earlier. I like this one.
Yeah.
It's got a really nice dried apricot note on the palate right now too.
Nice, good call. I can see that, absolutely. It's definitely got sharper wood tones than any of the others. It's definitely got a slightly more fuely sort of note on the palate too. I think that like mezcal sort of finish I was talking about. But I don't know, it's all working for me. Slightly burnt butter tarts on the palate too.
Yeah, that's a good call.
So Jeff, riffing on some other people here, has an idea about a cigar whiskey tasting. You know what's interesting about that is while we could never do it in the store, there's nothing to prevent us from having a virtual cigar and whiskey tasting where we line up some whiskeys and then encourage people to go out and find specific cigars. We would be breaking a rule if we procured said cigars for you, but if we all just agree to go out and find 2 specific cigars and a couple of whiskeys, we arrange the whiskeys as part of it on our end. That could be interesting. So
Well, based on the amount of people that have attended our tastings, we've seen plenty of different things smoked over time. So
are you suggesting a whiskey and marijuana pairing at some point?
I'm happy to take part on the whiskey portion, but
Or do you want to lead a whiskey and edibles tasting?
yeah, the whiskey and gummies. Yeah, it's just all jazz gummies, guys.
Yeah. Oh man. So 2002, what do we think about the 2002?
I don't think it's changed much from when we first had it.
No,
To me, the nose is immediately a lot more approachable than the 2000. The 2000, again, like I just go back to it. It just, to me, it's kind of got this barnyardy funk that I'm struggling to get past.
So heart on my sleeve here, I'm not hiding anything with this one. I think I kind of hinted at it earlier. You guys nailed this lineup because for me, you literally just walk up in quality every single one of these. And I do like the starting point even. This is a no-brainer range for me. I think I actually might prefer this to the 90s for cohesiveness.
I thought the way you did this, I thought it was going to be like it's like the Star Trek movies where you only watch the even ones and skip the odd ones.
Never seen a Star Trek movie in my life.
Oh, you're missing out, buddy.
Nope.
Evan, I'm with you on that, except for I don't know that I've ever analyzed the movies closely enough to do this with them. I just watched them and I don't know. They're like a guilty pleasure kind of thing.
Yep.
So
Agreed.
I think we're long overdue for a new Star Trek movie, to be totally honest.
There's plenty of new Star Trek out there.
Are we allowed to bring up, I think we brought this up during COVID, but like that new TV series they came out with a couple years ago. And like, don't get me wrong, I'm all for like being on the right side of things, but it just felt a little too woke.
Which was like, sorry?
Are you talking about oh geez, what's it called? The first new Star Trek that they did?
Was it Discovery or something?
Yeah,
Or,
Discovery.
yeah, like I liked it, but at a few times I was just kind of like, you're laying it on pretty thick. Like I want to be entertained.
What you need to do is you need to balance it out with you watch one episode of that and then one episode of Yellowstone, and you'll kind of end up sort of in the center again.
The irony, my wife who's a big socialist. She loves Yellowstone.
Oh, I think it's a great show. I mean, if you want to go super far right, then you watch the blue, one of the cop shows,
Oh,
the
yeah,
one
can't
with
do
Tom
it.
Selleck in it. Yeah.
Can't do it.
Oh,
Yeah, I mean, even Law and Order, like back in the day, it was a great show, and now it's just, I don't know. Anyway, we don't need to go down
Yeah.
this. That's a garden path best left not wandered down, I think. On to the 2003, shall we? And actually, Picard, I did love the first season of Picard. Did they make a second season of that?
Yeah, the second season's out. I haven't watched any of them yet.
Oh, because I actually quite like that. So
Yeah.
I think what I want is like I want something like I want something a bit gritty, but you know, like the reboot of the Batman movies, the Christian Bale Batman movies, where it's like not always a happy ending and it's dark, a dark version of reality, but not like film noir. I don't want to go that direction. So
Mhm.
I'm open for suggestions.
You're married to a
2003.
lawyer and you haven't watched Suits yet, right?
I haven't watched. No,
Ooh.
I haven't. I don't know.
Suits like seasons 1 to 4, I'd say are pretty awesome.
We're only on season 3 so far.
It
I don't
kind
know.
of, to me,
I'm
it goes
reluctant
off
to
the
watch
rails eventually.
anything with Megan in it.
Oh.
She's actually really good in it.
Yeah.
Marty, are you on team Kate and Will? Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm just not on Team Megan, definitely.
Okay.
Well, just doesn't like mixing his royalty with his actresses.
I don't think that this is the actual name of it, but I think it was called Boston Legal or something. I loved
Yeah.
that show. I thought that show was great. William Shatner was in it.
Oh, yeah.
But I don't know that Suits is for me. Just saying. 2003. What are we thinking about this one?
Now I can pick up on the port, going back and forth through the lineup a couple times there.
I thought the
Next watch on
2002 was
those
the
wrong
port.
palette.
The 02 is the port, right?
Yeah, I think
Okay.
the 02 is the port.
Yeah.
Then, okay, so whatever the 03 is, it almost comes across as slightly like minerally, clayish, almost like a peat note without being peaty. And the palate has a heavy wininess on the back end now that I didn't pick up at first. I just assumed it was the port.
It's quite a discussion on Suits going on here. The other reason I can't watch Suits is because Jenny's already seen Suits, and like I already have to watch shows with her. I can't watch other shows. There's just not enough time for that. So I have to focus.
Just go back and watch Night Court, man.
Night Court was awesome.
Night Court was awesome.
But you know what else was? Like, speaking of awesome sitcoms that didn't get enough credit, News Radio. That was a
Oh,
great
yeah.
TV show. This is still more like Bazooka Joe than Hubba Bubba to the 2002. At least nose-wise, I find it's a little less elegant. Oh yeah,
I
this
think
is the
Jeff
one that
said
was
something
super
really
eat
astute
more.
there.
What's that, Kurt?
I think Jeff said something really astute there in the comments.
Yeah, the tiny wisp of smoke. Well, we were talking about that when we were on this one.
Yeah, it's the last part of his comment that he said maybe a refill from the 70s or earlier that maybe held a slightly peated Glenfarclas. It's a good point.
Maybe.
Mhm.
Drinkability wise, though, I think I like the 2002 better.
I agree with that.
Cool. All right. 2006. That's where we're headed back to the first of the 4 sherry bombs for second pass through. What are our thoughts this time around?
A lot of stewed fruits, almost slightly leaning into the savories. Evan and I were joking about some tomatoes earlier. I'm not quite getting that kind of soupy tomatoey note, but it is kind of a little more into the savory mincy notes now.
A
I
little
can
bit
see
of
that, even
cayenne,
like a little bit of like roasted red pepper.
plasticine and Play-Doh right now for me too.
Oh, thanks, Noel.
Actually, you're right, Evan, a little bit of that Play-Doh note. I often
Yeah.
get that sort of doughy note, like homemade Play-Doh in a lot of whiskeys, but this
Yeah.
legitimately smells like Play-Doh brand Play-Doh a little bit.
Like really gooey puff wheat squares.
Yeah,
Yes, please.
like the chocolate ones.
Mhm. Palate's good. I think,
Yeah.
like I said, when we went through this the first time, I find it very one-dimensional, but it's pleasant, it's drinkable. I'd be very happy to drink this.
Yeah, I'm finding it a little bit tannic after going through the first three again. So,
Yeah, it's kind of like Christopher Nolan's Batman, where it's like it's really good at the start, but once you watch 3, it's like, we get it, you're a dark character.
I was gonna say, you mean like the trailer for the new one with whatever his name is?
I've
Where
never
it
seen
just
that.
looks like it's gonna be sad and
Are you
unrelenting.
talking about the Batman with Pattinson?
Yeah.
It's good. It's dark though.
I couldn't do it. I mean, I'm at a stage and a place in my life and in the world and in history where I don't want to watch something stressful anymore. I want to go home and like the world is stressful enough.
Well, to take it back, that's why I had to stop watching Suits after a certain amount of seasons, and Yellowstone, where it was just like, nothing good is ever going to happen to these characters. So I just got to move on.
I couldn't finish Yellowstone for that very
Yeah.
reason. I'm
Same.
discreetly avoiding finishing the show.
Like incredibly well written and great acting.
Yeah,
And
I want to go back
legitimately looks like they're on a farm, but it's just, yeah.
I just want to go back and start The Office over again because I know what I'm going to get from it.
Mhm.
Peter Green says, just go watch Three's Company. Well, I loved that show back in the day, but have you watched it recently?
I don't know that I
Yeah.
ever liked John Ritter, to be honest. Like,
Bite your
I
tongue.
found him a bit grating.
Bite your tongue.
oh,
Yeah.
All in the Family, yeah.
Well, it's a good night when there's like a couple of dozen white men reminiscing about the old times. So,
At the time that like they didn't have the term, but someone would have been saying this is too woke.
or too privileged.
Yeah.
2005. What are our thoughts coming back to 2005?
Still back on that orange marmalade now, and ginger ale still for me.
Yeah, grape jelly and orange marmalade slammed together.
Yeah,
Yeah.
bit more of the chocolate orange coming in for me here on that
I
one.
was gonna say grape flavored kids cough syrup on the nose.
That I think what makes this better than the 2006 for me is it's got this great sweetness that balances out the bitterness that comes on the finish, whereas the 2006 just goes dark and bitter right away.
Yeah.
So great cough syrup, Andrew. So you're suggesting this is a good ingredient to make flaming moes then?
Flaming Moe's. Yeah.
This is the TV
classic
reference
Simpsons.
episode of a Kensington wine market tasting, I guess.
Speaking of which, Evan, do you still use your children's like medicine dispenser as your water?
Yeah.
Your water
Hell yeah.
tool? Yeah.
Still here.
So I got something like that for Walter with his deworming, but I wasn't sure that would ever be suitable for use as a place to add water to the whiskey.
Yeah. Mine is never touched ivermectin. Yours, I'm not so sure.
Joe Rogan said.
I like that 2005. It's lovely. Speaking of Joe Rogan, Netflix was like suggesting I watch this show And it's about this guy who's got this theory that there were civilizations long before we believe civilizations were in place. And I got like 10 minutes into the episode, and then like Joe Rogan makes an appearance. I'm like, all right, I'm out. This is over.
Weren't you saying news radio was awesome?
Yeah, but I mean, we didn't know he was crazy back when news radio was on. He was just the wacky mechanic who couldn't fix the elevator.
Oh man, so I don't know if anybody else on the internet remembers this. If you were like getting out of your edgy teenage phase and getting into more legitimate adulthood. I'm still working on that. I'm not sure if I'm there yet, but at the time they're in the early, around just before news radio, Joe Rogan used to be on webcams all the time and followed this website called the Style Project, which was absolutely horrendous. Like 4chan horrendous, if you know what that is. But I don't think he was ever a really good guy.
Yeah. I was
And
gonna
then he
say,
did Fear Factor after that. So
Evan, I was gonna say, yeah, he made people eat live bugs. You said he was on webcams, like just,
Yep.
that's not what I thought you were talking about at first. I thought maybe people were paying
Yeah.
to see.
yeah, not those webcams.
And Walter might make an appearance. We'll see. He has been sleeping at my feet until about 10 minutes ago, and he just got up. All right, 2004. The often solid one.
Shows like a rock star.
Yeah.
Love the nose on it.
Get a little bit of bacon infused chocolate now.
It's still a little bit grapey, but the grapiness is kind of much toned down from the big heavy Welch's stuff we were getting earlier. More balanced now.
Yeah. Not quite as sweet as that 05.
So here's a geeky question for you. Andrew, I'll ask you first, and then I want to know from Evan and from Marty as well on this one. This is a really good whiskey. It's a really good cask. Now, if you've got a cask like this, that's obviously quite active, because this isn't a super old whiskey or anything, would you leave it longer and see what it could do? Or would you go, no, this is really good, pull it out?
No, I think that's the tricky thing. And I mean, the distilleries that do this well are pulling them. And I think it's probably not surprising that a lot of what we're seeing from the late 70s from Glenfarclas is in fourth fill casks or refill casks, because I just don't think that this would do well with another 10, 15 years behind it, let alone 25.
Marty, what do you think?
Well, I think I would take this whiskey out of the cask now, and believing the cask is good, fill it again and leave it longer the second time.
Evan?
Could have been part of a really good batch of 20-year-old 105 maybe down the road.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I don't
Jess
think
just
on
said
its
what
own,
Marty
though.
said. I think Marty nailed it.
Yeah.
All right, 2001. This is still my favorite on the nose.
And on the palate.
Yeah. So Kurt, you were saying before about how you thought you liked this lineup better than the 90s. I don't know. I quite liked the 90s lineup because there was a couple things in there that I felt had that sort of old school sherry style, whereas tonight there's only one. So including our 92, which just to continue the marketing thing, I poured myself a little drama of here to finish off on. Because if you're not familiar with this bad boy, which is now less than half the price of the 2022 1992 bottling from Glenfarclas. And despite what they told Kurt at his tasting, it is a family cask. It
That's
must
right.
also be added. Yeah, this is an insane deal. This is almost the same price as most of the whiskeys in tonight's lineup. And it's 10 years older by or more than all of the whiskeys in
Yeah.
tonight's.
Yeah, wait till the S22 release and it'll be cheaper than most of the whiskeys in the 2000s lineup.
Yeah.
But as far as tonight's lineup goes, yeah, I'm just really digging that 2001. Evan, do you want to tee up the poll?
Yeah,
Because I kind of feel like the four of us have got favorites here. And yeah, I'd like people to vote before we blather on too much longer.
while people are voting, I do got to say that especially with the last four, but even the first three, I agree. I think you with Kurt, I think you nailed the order of the lineup. And I think like the 1990s did in its own way, this still does show a really cool progression where you're going from vintage to vintage on how things do change over time. Because except for the 2006, I think for me, the 2005, 2004, and 2001 all show really nicely and do show you where like that almost that gap between old school and new school sherry.
Mhm. Well, and as Jeff has pointed out here, everything in the S22 release, which is coming next year, that's 2000 vintage or older, is more expensive than the 92 that we bottled.
Mhm.
So kind of a crazy thought there. Yeah. All right, people are voting. Voting is in progress. Kurt, what were your favorites tonight?
I was dead serious when I said it earlier. From start to finish, the order you had them in, brilliantly done. And at first run, I was like, and it's perfectly in line with quality too. I think at this point, just because I'm getting that slight off note on the 03, I would switch the 02 and 03 in terms of my favorite. But otherwise, you could just walk backwards. The 01 is a rock star, the 04 is a rock star. The others are all really, really good too. And I would happily drink any one of these, including that one that I said is kind of slow.
All right, Marty.
I'm just struggling to decide which is my favorite, but I think I'm gonna have to say the 01 is my first choice, and then I would go with the 04. I did find that port cask one, it's not sitting well on my palate, so I would not. And it's drinkable, but it's not one I would take.
Okay, cool. Evan.
The 2004 is really good, but I actually prefer the 2005. That hit of sweetness right up
Mhm.
front, and then everything coming in afterwards, I really enjoy. 2004 and 2001 are really good, but I'm gonna actually break it up and do the heavy sherry versus the not heavy sherry, and say I'll take 2005 from the heavy sherry side of things, and then I think I'm gonna go actually with the 2000 surprisingly for the not so sherried side of
Mm.
things.
It's funky, yeah.
I don't mind that farminess in there.
Yeah, now it's like wet hay on the nose now.
What about yourself, Mr. Ferguson?
Mhm.
You know, I really wanted to love that 2002. But I think three of the whiskeys in the back end, the more heavily sherried end, outshone it. And I would have to go 01, 05, 04 in that order. And then the 06 is okay, but to be honest, to me, it's very tight and very, very one-dimensional. I find that the more we go through this lineup, the less that 02 is really shining as much as I thought it was initially. But yeah, the hands down winner tonight for me, and it's not even close, as the 01.
Mhm. Well, I will end the poll because 12 of 13 have given their 2 cents.
Mhm.
And
We did
the
get,
2002 actually did really, really well.
Look at that, and 04.
Mhm. But then 2001 was easily the winner for second favorite.
Mhm. I think we had about 5 people email me today saying they couldn't make tonight's tasting because they just got sick or what have you. So I know Shannon and Robin, who've been in a lot of our tastings, are both home ill. So I hope you guys get well soon. And there was a couple of other people who emailed me as well too. So sorry if I didn't remember your names to mention you tonight, but this was an awesome lineup. The problem with a tasting like this is we're talking about 7 of the same thing or similar things, and it doesn't leave a lot of scope for storytelling and things because everything here is from one producer, all from one particular range that they do. But I think it's still worth addressing and commenting on, like, how cool it is that we have a distillery that's still able to do something like this. I mean, Glendronach and Ben Riach were doing it for a while, but they've given up. No one else out there, even like if you compare what they put out this year, their S22 releases, no one else is doing anything close to this. And I just think it's incredible that, you know, you have a distillery that's managed to hold on to enough stock of everything from the mid 80s on, where they could potentially release another cask every single year, and something, maybe not all of them are rock star, but like most of them are, the vast majority are good, is pretty cool. And Kurt, I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on that, because, you know, we can complain all we want about the fact that the prices on some of these are going up, but you could also make the argument that we've probably been spoiled for too long.
I 100% agree. I think even with the recent increases we've seen with Glenfarclas and the upcoming increases we will see with Glenfarclas, they're still underpriced compared to everybody else on the market. And I think we all have to be a little bit more forgiving to and realize that sherry whiskeys going forward are going to be a rarity and are going to be a real treat, because there's just no 2 ways about it. Sherry seasoned casks are not even close to what sherry casks were, and those barrels are either done and gone, or they're on their last legs, I would argue, in terms of what we're going to see for really, really good quality sherries. So good on these guys for being able to keep pulling it off and having warehouses full of cool stuff. The years ahead are still going to get on our list.
Yeah. Well, I think you can look at it. There's a handful of companies that have a very long-term picture of the way they do business, and they don't all do it as well as maybe they should. You know, I think Springbank is that one that we love, but like sometimes you're frustrated to want to like pull your hair out about some of it, but you respect the fact that like they don't jack their prices up. Like, and it's interesting, like, you know, Gordon MacPhail is a good example of this too. Like, we've obviously seen a big escalation in price for their older whiskeys, but for their stuff that's 25 and under, relatively speaking, it's still very good value. And I think companies like that are conscious of the fact that the industry goes through cycles, and we might still be in the boom. I would suggest possibly at the tail end of a boom. And they realize there's going to be a snap back at some point where demand snaps back and they've got to deal with price. And I think there's a handful of companies that are reluctant to push their prices too far, because they realize at that point when the demand cycle rebalances, they don't want to get caught flat-footed. And, you know, the other one that's interesting, and that is Glenallachie. Like, it's frustrating that we now have to ballot Glenallachie 15-year-old, but Billy and his team are reluctant to push the price too far on that, because they know there's going to be a point when they have enough of that product to meet demand, and they don't want to have to be put in a position where they have a whole bunch of it and it's not selling because they pushed the price too high.
To go
Evan
along
and
with
I
that,
had that. Sorry, Evan?
to go along with that, and I think I know what we're going to talk about, so I'll let you go after this, but it just goes to show in hindsight, especially, how lucky we are that we got our Glenallachie single cask when we did.
Or our 92 Glenfarclas.
Yeah.
Or our 21-year-old Glenfarclas. I mean,
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, so we were one of 5 stores in Alberta. 2 stores are getting a cask that hasn't come yet. that got Glenfarclas Cask. I think Co-op and Willow Park were the others that got Glenallachie's. And yeah, we were told, like, I remember when James told me he was here, and then he said, oh, and by the way, it might be the last one you get. Because they've realized, like, with the trying to maintain the quality of what they're putting out there, they can't keep pushing volume because they don't have it. And I have a respect for that, because we saw what companies like Macallan did when demand outstripped supply in the early 2000s. They came up with, like, basically new Coke and pushed it on people in the form of Fine and Rare, and then the 1824 collection. It must take a lot of willpower to have demand going through the roof and not be just pumping out garbage to fill it, and or jacking your prices because you know the market will bear it. I guess that's the broader point that I'm trying to bring across. And I would invite Walter down, but it sounds like in his crazies right now, driving my wife and her parents crazy upstairs.
Kurt, what were you going to say?
You and I were driving today, Evan, and we had this exact conversation about these brands and how it's hard to fault them for, you know, making hay while the sun shines, but at the same time, it's a long game, as Andrew was saying. So you shoot yourself in the foot by absolutely taking advantage of your customers. And, you know, I'm not keen on the concept of Schadenfreude. I don't want to see any of these distilleries hurt or take a hit, because these are the things we love, right? But ultimately, if they take a little bit of slap on the wrist, or they feel a little bit of a pinch for a while after they've egregiously gouged people for pricing for a while, you kind of reap what you sow. So we want to see them all succeed, but to Andrew's point, companies like Glenfarclas or Springbank or any of the Urquhart stuff, whether it's been Romic or GM stuff, those that have been sort of fair with their pricing are probably going to have a lot more long-term customer loyalty. Wow, that was really trouble.
Well, and the cool thing about Gordon MacPhail especially is like, if we look back like 4 year pre-COVID, 4 or 5 years ago, they did have a price adjustment that was like relatively egregious, especially in hindsight, where it was like they jumped the gun. But I think also they realized it over time and corrected because and in our favor, even because, oh man, like some of the the G&M stuff that we have right now,
Like the
pricing is
talkers. Yeah.
The pricing is fantastic.
So Evan, I mean, it's a bit of a complicated picture, because I think Gordon MacPhail realized they weren't pricing things properly in some markets, but the problem was they raised their prices, but they didn't think about the fact that their supply chain in the UK or even Europe pre-Brexit is a lot shorter than their supply chain to Canada and the US. And they didn't factor in the different elements that have to be included.
Yeah.
And they've done a very good job, to your point, in the last few years of going back and addressing that and fixing it, so that they've got $125 14-year-old sherry bomb single cask strength, which like no one else out there has that. And you look at Glenfarclas, and I think Glenfarclas has been able to continuously put out good products. And 10 years ago, people would look at the young 2000s Glenfarclas and say, what a ripoff. But let's talk again, just circling back on Glenfarclas and talk about tonight's range. What I think is interesting about this is I think we have at least 6 whiskeys in this range tonight that are excellent whiskeys. And yes, some of them are priced high-ish for what we might think of the vintage or how we would look at that. But in the context of quality, in the context of a good product, they're obviously in demand and they're obviously selling. And I might have a Walter moment. Hey, buddy. He's back. He's back, everybody. So yeah, I think this is a cool range tonight. I'm really happy we did this, because I mean, it'd be very easily to just sell off the bottles that we want to sell off, because the family cask, by and large, they all do sell out. But we talk about this a lot. Like, a lot of our best tastings are the ones where we want to try them ourselves. And if we want to try them, there's a good chance other people are going to want to try them too.
Mhm. No, it's,
And he's about to just, sorry.
No, it's the since Andrew's off chasing a dog. One of the things I love about working at Kensington Wine Market is it's not just the like what's gonna sell us some bottles. Like that's always important at the end of the day. But doing tastings like this where we can just geek out about one range or one style and be incredibly thankful for the fact that these bottles were opened and we got to try them even if there's no bottle to buy. It is so fun to do that and to talk about them with this and the 1990s tasting. And it's going to be the same thing with the the same thing to the nth degree with the kinship tasting. The amount of money that you have to buy to find out you do or don't like something in that range with the kinship tasting or with something like this is crazy. And to be able to do it on a bit more of a budget, and whether you're just checking a box off to say you've tried it or just really enjoying the whiskey, either way, it's quite the value.
I think what Evan's trying to say is cheers to all you happy drunken arses that allow us to drink all this great stuff. Appreciate doing it with you all.
Yeah.
No, absolutely.
Yeah, it's awful nice of you to sit in on our tasting. We appreciate that.
And listen to us go off on rants about TV shows from the 80s and 90s.
Yeah.
Closing comments on this tonight. I want to say thank you, as Evan alluded, and Kurt, to all of you for taking part in this, because if you guys weren't interested in doing this, we wouldn't be able to do it. So thank you for that. I think for me, one of the best things that's come out of the COVID pandemic and the changes we've had in the last couple of years is the ability to do stuff like this, because there are people who want to do this in Calgary. I mean, I can see on the screen here tonight, we've got Howard I think he's in Bridgeland, not far. We've got Kenneth in Edmonton. We've got Peter Green in Ottawa. We've got Sky Andrews in Vancouver and Jeff on Vancouver Island. And I could go on naming people who are on this chat. Vincent in Calgary, Tom in Cornwall. The fact that it allows us to find those people who want to take part in interesting things like this makes it incredibly worthwhile and incredibly, it just makes it awesome that we've got a community to do these. I'm going to keep doing them next year. We haven't started rolling out our tasting schedule for 2022. Partly because we've got a sale to get through and we just finished building our whiskey calendars. And as always, there's a lot of stuff on the go. So there will be more to come. But I do want to really say thank you to all of you, because I know a lot of you have been taking part in many of our tastings over the course of the last year and or 3 years for that matter. And we're very grateful for that. So thank you for that. I want to say thank you to Evan, Kurt, and Marty for taking part from the shop tonight. The calendar tastings are going to be fun too. Evan and I will be on those. We might have the odd staff person joining us, or maybe special guests. Evan, that's something we should really circle back on and plan.
Yeah, we should take a look at that.
Yeah,
planning sounds a little bit robust, but
that?
we should get some. Planning sounds a little bit more over the top, but we should get some special guests.
Well, there's a few that are local-ish, as it were, that we can figure out. But those are a lot of fun to do. I mean, the calendar this year, as someone was saying, was a bit of a struggle to get across the finish line this year. We had 6 extra products purchased because we've learned every year that things don't show up or show up late or they're registered wrong. So the government holds on to them. And of those 6 products, of the 6 extras, none of them are here. We basically got down to the wire and had 3 things never left Europe. 2 things are somewhere in between. We don't even know where they are. And 1 thing is supposedly in a customs hold up in Edmonton. So yeah, we got it done, but we've got some fun things to talk about, including the last whiskey that snuck into the calendar this year, which was the one I think we really wanted to get in there, which is going to be fun to talk about. So for those of you who are joining us on that journey, I look forward to it. But again, thank you, everyone. Thanks for joining us tonight. And until we chat again about whiskey soon.